rhetoric and the name-calling.
Okay, Brent, thanks a lot for your contribution. Let's ask Rami Khouri. Brent almost has a roadmap for peace of his own. I just want to focus for a second on what he said about the possibility of an interim government in Egypt and wanting Mohammed al-Baradei to be a part of it, because we have heard from al-Baradei and Hezbollah Wafd, one of the secular, if you like, political parties there, saying publicly that if they come to power, that they will honor and respect the peace deal with Israel. That's quite encouraging, is it not?
It is, and I think it reflects the reality that the overwhelming majority of Egyptians want to maintain the peace agreement. They don't want to go back to a state of war with Israel, but they also want justice for the Palestinians. The Arabs have made it clear, all the Arabs, through the Arab Peace Plan, they're prepared to live with Israel, have normal relations with it. If the Palestinian issue is resolved according to law and international resolutions, and Israel gets its core demands, which is to live in security as a Jewish majority state that it is now, but resolving the refugee issue according to law. So I think there is a great opportunity to do this. I would argue that Brent's point is good, and Meir said the Israelis should take the initiative on this now. They feel cornered, they feel vulnerable, they're worried. Take the initiative, show that you're really serious about making a peace agreement that addresses the core issues of Palestinian refugeehood as well as Israeli security. And the Arabs should reaffirm the 2002 peace plan. Make it more clear. What are we talking about and about these issues? How do we solve these issues? And what is the tremendous future for all of us if you have 350 million Arabs with the Turks and Iranians and Israelis all working together? There's a glorious future if we can do it.
Okay, Rami, sorry to stop you there, but we have run out of time. Rami Khouri, Meir Javedanfar and Gil Hoffman, thank you very much for joining us here on the Riz Khan Show. And thank you so much for being with us. Remember, you can watch a podcast of the show on iTunes. On the next show, what will be the next twist in Haiti's unfolding political drama? With an election winner yet to be decided, how could the return of two of the country's most controversial former leaders affect the political process? Make sure to tune in for that. And we'll see you next time right here on The Riz Khan Show. From me, Imran Garda, and the rest of the team. Thanks for watching.
Business Latest is brought to you by the Qatar Tourism Authority and Catalan. Business Latest is brought to you by the Qatar Tourism Authority and Catalan.
Can you imagine what 900 trillion cubic feet of gas looks like? Often 10,000 feet below the surface. Now try and imagine the technology needed to extract it. Then distributing that gas to a far-off and energy-hungry world. We believe in pushing technology to its limits. Now try and imagine a world without Qatar gas.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come.
In a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Hundreds of thousands take to the streets in Egypt, despite the announcement of a raft of new reforms. Hello, live from Doha. This is Al Jazeera. I'm Adrian Finnegan. Many of those demonstrators still aren't happy that the government they don't want will be in charge of those proposed changes. And now the vice president's in the firing line. The US criticizes Omar Suleiman for saying that Egypt isn't ready for democracy. Also on the program, Al Jazeera gains exclusive footage of the funeral of a Guantanamo detainee who died in controversial circumstances. And welcome back. The man who could be in charge of a newly independent southern Sudan returns home to begin work. So thousands of protesters are still demonstrating in Egypt's capital Cairo against the government of Hosni Mubarak, and the mood appears to be spreading. Crowds are reported to be forming outside the country's parliament. Now that's despite an appearance earlier on national television by the vice president, who announced plans for a raft of reforms. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher reports.
This was a message to those who thought the protesters were losing ground. Thousands upon thousands answering the new call to action in central Cairo. Some moved from the square, the focus for them, the parliament building.
Our goal isn't just ousting the system, but our goal is to change the system. We are not asking for a name changing. We do not ask for the appointment of a vice president, and we do not ask for a new ministry. Egypt is without a constitution, and the system has lost its legitimacy.
They came onto the streets just after the president revealed a roadmap for change. But this was reform, not resignation. He set up 3 committees. The first will look at constitutional reform, what needs to be done and when. The second will investigate the violence against anti-Mubarak protesters. And the third is aimed at getting as many people together as possible to discuss the country's future.
Today, the President signed a presidential decree for the formation of the Constitutional Committee to carry out necessary amendments to the Constitution and the parallel legislative amendments. He also instructed the Prime Minister to form the steering committee to follow up with the precise implementation of the agreements reached by the parties to the national dialogue, and a third fact-finding committee on the incidents and clashes of Wednesday last, and to refer the outcomes to the Chief Prosecutor to take necessary actions.
40 prominent figures want Egypt's Prosecutor General to investigate the Mubarak family's wealth and allegations it has stolen millions from the state.
We are asking the Prosecutor General to verify if these news are true or not. If it is true, then we must proceed and ask them to give their statements, and then they go to court, and then they should be punished.
They're also demonstrating again in Alexandria, where thousands have turned out in the centre of Egypt's second biggest city. The committees announced by President Mubarak are a win for the demonstrators, concessions which 15 days ago seemed impossible. But they're still after the big prize, the removal of the president himself. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Well, Alaa Abdel Fattah is an activist and blogger. He is near the Parliament building where protests are currently taking place. We told you that there are reports that a crowd is massing at Parliament. Alaa, it's not far from Tahrir Square, the Parliament building there. How many people are there? What's happening?
Well, no, it's not far at all. It's a short walking distance, and it's we're only a few thousand here in front of Parliament. Of course, you know, there was a time when a few thousand in front of Parliament was something to be bad, but now, but it's still, more people are coming from Tahrir, and people that plan to spend the night here. We already have tents laid out, blankets, and so on. And it's a crowd big enough to basically make it possible to enter the Parliament, or the opposite to the Parliament is the what they call it. It's where the building where the cabinet meets. You know.
What's the army doing, and how close to the building has the army allowed you to get?
Well, the Initially, the army was deployed at all entrances with only, like a couple of soldiers each. And now they've pulled back. They have tanks at the entrance of one entrance of the street, and a few soldiers just patrolling. So it's very relaxed. They're allowing us to paint on the walls, to climb